I'd barely stepped out of the taxi in front of my grandpa's porch when the door swung open and his voice sliced straight through the cold air. "Why did you arrive in a taxi? What happened to the BMW we gifted you for your birthday?" He asked it slowly, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle piece that suddenly didn't fit anymore. I inhaled, preparing to explain why the car, meant for my work, wasn't with me now. But before I could bring even a single syllable to life, a voice behind him, bright, polished, rehearsed, answered in my place. And right there on his doorstep, everything began to quietly shift. My name is Pandora, and most days I smell like varnish, paint, and fresh-cut pine because I run a tiny ornament studio tucked inside a rented workspace in Seattle. It's not pretty. The floor creaks, the heater rattles like it's arguing with the cold, and glitter clings to my hair and sleeves no matter how hard I try to shake it off. But it's mine. Every miniature cabin I detail, every snow globe I glue shut, every name I write by hand, they're the closest thing I've ever held that feels solid beneath me. People like to call me patient, but that's only because they can't see past the surface. I'm not patient. I'm cautious. I learned young that if you keep your voice soft and your movements steady, people don't bother you too much. And being left alone to work has always been the safest place I know. My family would have their own version of me. My mother, Clarissa, labels me the dependable one, which in our house means the person everyone uses until they collapse. If something breaks, I fix it. If someone falls behind, I cover it. If Blair, my younger sister, needs anything for her influencer routines, whether it's visibility, money, or leverage, my mother decides I should provide it. "You're the older sister," she likes to say, as if being born first was some binding agreement to sacrifice everything. Blair is 22, charming, camera fluent, and treated like the star of the family's brand. My mother calls her our public-facing child, which is an odd thing to say unless you've turned your household into a business strategy. My father, Rowan, stays mostly silent. He loves us in the quiet, inconsistent way a man does when conflict terrifies him. When my mother speaks, he folds with barely a whisper. The only person who ever truly saw me, not for what I could do, but simply for who I was my Grandpa Edmund. He's the reason I had a BMW at all. A few years back, when my small table at the weekend market grew into an actual business, he told me, "If you're hauling fragile pieces across this city, you need a car that won't fall apart on you." He ignored all the gleaming, showy vehicles and picked a used SUV with a wide trunk and brakes that wouldn't betray me. He handed me the keys, as if it was the most natural decision in the world. My mother smiled for the camera. Later, she said, "We'll keep it within the family," which in her language means what's mine will always ultimately be theirs to claim. So when Grandpa asked about the BMW on his porch, confusion written all over his face, every uncomfortable moment from the last year rose inside me like a warning I hadn't wanted to hear. And before I could form a single explanation, my mother's voice drifted out from behind him. She stepped into the doorway like she had been waiting for her cue. "She doesn't have the BMW anymore," she said lightly while smoothing her blouse. "Her sister has it now." The words hit the room like something sharp enough to draw blood. I blinked once, twice, like I needed a moment for the truth to register. Grandpa didn't move. His hand stayed locked around the doorknob, knuckles turning pale. Behind him, I could see the dining room and my whole family paused mid-action. Blair stood near the table, a ring light humming behind her, casting reflections in her eyes like she was already framing the scene for future content. She took a sip from her glass. "It's just practicality," she chimed. "I have meetings everywhere, and you hardly use the car. You work in a studio. I'm constantly moving." My throat tightened. "Mom," I tried quietly, but the word barely existed. Clarissa released a soft, polished laugh, the kind she uses when she wants something messy to sound perfectly reasonable. "Sweetheart, you don't drive often. You're always tucked in that workshop. Blair needs transportation to shoots and collaborations. It's logical." Logical for her. Everything was when it circled back to Blair. My thoughts spiraled. How many times had Blair told me she needed the car for just a weekend? How often my mother slipped her the keys before I even opened my mouth? And how often I had been told to take a rideshare when I needed to deliver fragile orders or pick up supplies. I had convinced myself it wasn't worth arguing. I'd convinced myself the situation was temporary, but temporary had turned permanent without anyone asking me. Grandpa's gaze shifted to me, slow and deliberate. He asked, "Is that true?" And I froze, not because I didn't know the answer, but because no one had asked for my truth in years. In my family, silence from me was treated like permission. Blair set her glass down with a crisp clink. "Honestly, Pandora, if you planned better, this wouldn't be strange. I am the one who actually needs mobility." There it was, my sister diminishing me with effortless ease. Something tightened inside me, a thread pulled so taut, it trembled. A quiet burn lit in my chest. Not dramatic, not explosive, just steady. Grandpa pressed his lips together. He didn't look at Blair or my mother. His eyes stayed fixed on me, as if he could feel that something in me was changing, even if no one else cared enough to notice. And standing there, holding a box of fragile ornaments against my ribs, I felt the first fracture in the version of myself they had shaped, the version that gave too easily, bent too willingly, softened too quickly. For the first time in years, I felt myself harden. Grandpa finally stepped back to let me inside, but the warmth of the house didn't touch me. I moved through the dining room like a shadow drifting through a life I wasn't truly part of. Everyone settled as if nothing significant had happened, as if they hadn't redrawn the borders of what belonged to me. Dinner drifted on. I nodded when spoken to. I chewed without tasting. My mother talked about Blair's opportunities. My father echoed her quietly, eyes never lifting. Only Grandpa watched everything with sharp, uneasy attention. When I left that night, Blair having taken the BMW yet again, I slid into the back seat of another rideshare, hands knotted together. I didn't cry, not at first. The tears sat heavy inside me like a storm waiting for its break. When I unlocked my studio, the cold air rushed around me. I switched on a single lamp above my workbench, the glow small but honest. I sank to the floor between boxes of unfinished orders, inhaling the familiar scent of pine and acrylic paint. Then the first tear dropped. And another. And soon I wasn't sure if I was crying over a car or over years of being quietly drained. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Long enough for the heater to power down, long enough for my fingertips to sting with cold. When I finally wiped my face, something new settled inside me. A sharp clarity. A bitter awareness. I opened my laptop and checked my accounts. At first, the numbers blurred. Then they cleared. Payments labeled family promotion. Bills I never authorized. Transfers marked temporary support. Purchases Blair made during live streams. Packages I never saw. Line after line. Month after month. I added the totals twice because I didn't believe it the first time. Nearly $9,000, money meant to keep my studio alive. Money that belonged to me. In the silence of that freezing studio, the truth hit with brutal precision. I wasn't irresponsible. I wasn't slipping. I wasn't falling behind. I was being drained. Something solidified in me, a resolve I had never allowed myself to reach. I opened a new document and began building a complete record. Charges, dates, screenshots, notes, every detail. A clean ledger of what had been taken under the disguise of family. When I finished, I saved it, stared at it. The numbers didn't lie, and for the first time, neither would I. My phone buzzed. Grandpa's name lit the screen. "Come by tomorrow," he said. "We need to talk." His tone wasn't anxious. It was steady, prepared. And so was I. Grandpa's home was always warm, even in the coldest seasons. But that morning, when I pulled into his driveway, something about the air felt different. Quiet, heavy, waiting. His truck was already there. The blinds were open, and when I stepped inside, the first thing I saw was the dining table he'd pushed to the center of the room, cleared of everything except two thick stacks of papers. One was mine, my record of every payment, every bill, every unauthorized charge I'd compiled. The other I didn't know yet. "Sit," he said gently. I did. He didn't lecture or comfort. He simply opened my folder and read in silence, that same heavy, calculating stillness he'd shown the night before. When he finished, he straightened the pages and said, "This isn't confusion. This is consistent misuse." The word misuse landed with the weight of truth. I didn't need validation, but somehow hearing it from him steadied something inside me. He motioned to the second stack. "These are mine. Documents I've kept for years. Things your mother doesn't know I have." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. "Pandora, your family has been treating your work as a shared resource, not your livelihood. Today, that ends. I'll take the lead. You only need to speak the truth." Fear should have risen in me. Confrontation had never been my language. But instead, I felt something almost serene. A calm that came from finally standing in the open after years of hiding in my own silence. "At 10 sharp," he said, "they'll all be here." And they were. Clarissa arrived first, wearing perfume too sweet and attention too sharp. Rowan followed, his shoulders curled inward like he wished he could fold himself into the wall. Blair walked in with the phone in her hand, ring light reflections still in her pupils, acting as if this were another content meeting. "What's going on, Dad?" Clarissa asked, dropping her purse onto a chair as though she owned the room. Grandpa didn't answer with words. He simply tapped the table. "Sit." It wasn't a request. They obeyed. I sat across from them, my palms flat against my knees, grounding myself in the wood grain beneath my fingers. Grandpa stood at the head of the table, the documents arranged neatly before him. He began without preamble. "Pandora prepared a detailed record of funds taken from her business and personal accounts. These are payments, real payments, she covered for this family. And these," he lifted the corner of my report, "are expenses charged to her without consent." Clarissa's smile came fast, brittle. "Dad, these are misunderstandings. She's always been dramatic about money. Pandora knows we help each other." "No," Grandpa cut sharply. "What you call helping is actually draining her." Blair scoffed. "I never asked her to do anything she didn't want to do. The car, the ads, the supplies, those were investments. Family investments." Grandpa turned his gaze to her, and Blair shrank without meaning to. "Tell me," he asked softly, "did you pay her back? Even once?" Blair's lips parted. No sound followed. Rowan rubbed the back of his neck, words stuck behind his silence. Grandpa continued, voice steady but unyielding. "Pandora lost access to the car I gifted her. She lost money meant for her rent, her materials, her stability. She's been carrying this family's weight alone, while the three of you called it teamwork." Clarissa's face reddened. "Dad, this is inappropriate. We don't need a tribunal. This is family. We share." She never complained. "I didn't complain," I said quietly. "Because every time I tried to set a boundary, you called it selfish. Every time I said I needed the car back, you told me Blair's work was more important. Every time money left my account, you said I was overreacting." Clarissa whipped toward me. "So this is what you're doing? Making us look like villains?" I kept my voice even. I didn't have to make anything. You acted, I recorded. Silence slid across the room like a sheet of ice. Grandpa tapped the second stack of documents. "And now I'll make something very clear. Years ago, I saved a fund meant to support the grandchildren building something real. I intended to divide it between you someday, but after witnessing how you've treated Pandora, after seeing how her work, her resources, her independence were treated like communal property, I've reassigned it." Clarissa stiffened. "Dad, it goes to Pandora alone," he said firmly. "It's enough for her to secure a better studio lease and expand her business without ever relying on you again." Blair's jaw dropped. "You're rewarding her for attacking us?" "She's not attacking you," Grandpa said.
She's finally telling the truth. Rowan exhaled shakily. Maybe we can talk about a compromise. No, I said. Quiet, but absolute. There's no compromise on my livelihood. Their eyes snapped at me. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away. I am done funding this household.
I'm done covering for Blair's content, for the bills that magically became my problem, for the debts disguised as teamwork. If you need help, I'll bring groceries when I can. But my business is mine. My income is mine, and the BMW returns to me today. Clarissa pushed back from the table so quickly her chair screeched. You ungrateful girl! After everything we've done for you? Grandpa stepped between us. His voice didn't rise, but the room obeyed it. Enough. Clarissa froze. You raised her to be reliable, Grandpa said, not disposable. And you treated her reliability like free labor. No one spoke. Not one person defended themselves. Grandpa placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and said the words that had been echoing since the thumbnail moment. And what I do next, Pandora, it's because I'm proud of you. He turned to the family. His decision stood. My boundaries stood. And for the first time, I felt tall in a room that once made me small. The days that followed felt strangely quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on a life that used to hum with tension. I signed a short lease on a bright corner studio in Seattle, a place with big windows, good light, and space enough to breathe without bumping into memories that hurt. Moving in took 3 nights of borrowed handcart and the stubborn determination I didn't know I possessed until everything cracked open. Grandpa visited on the first morning. He didn't bring speeches or advice, just a thermos of tea and a small grin that said he'd been waiting years for me to claim something that was mine. He sat on the spare stool while I arranged shelves, occasionally pointing out a crooked frame with the same calm tone he used when teaching me how to measure wood as a kid. Blair came by once, unannounced. She walked slowly through the shop, touching ornaments she used to treat like props. When she chose one, a tiny camera with a silver ribbon, she placed the full payment on the counter without asking for a discount or a favor. For a friend, she murmured. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a performance, just a moment between 2 women trying to figure out who they were without the roles our mother assigned. Clarissa didn't visit. She sent short texts every few days, all sugar and implication. I replied with my shop hours or a simple, I'm busy today. Polite, boundaried, clear. It was the first time we'd ever spoken on equal ground. At night, when the shop lights dimmed and the street outside softened, I felt something settle in me. Something steady, earned, and unmistakably mine. Peace. The kind that comes only after choosing yourself. I used to think family loyalty meant saying yes until I disappeared. Now I know it simply means showing up with honesty even when it costs you. Standing in my new studio, surrounded by the quiet hum of a life I built on my own terms, I finally understood something. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose who to let through. If you've ever had to fight for your own space, your own voice, your own worth, tell me where you're listening from. And if this story stayed with you, follow the channel so you don't miss the next.